Good morning and welcome to Do You See What I See? I'm Yolanda Nava. We have a really wonderful guest this morning. He is a professor, an activist, an historian and genealogist, Dr. Ron Maestas of New Mexico. Welcome, Ron. It's a delight to have you here.
The host has spotlighted your video for everyone.
It's my pleasure. You're a saint, and the technician is a saint.
Well, I don't know about that, Ron. I don't always feel very saintly, but I'm very grateful that you're well and you're with us today. Ron has had an extraordinary life and career. We met several years ago when he asked if he could use a portion of my book, It's All in the Frijoles, in one of the books he was writing. And since that time, and it's been several years now, we have become uh, email friends and phone friends. He's in New Mexico, and I'm here in the desert of California. I spent 10 years in New Mexico, and so I know the history and culture very well. I worked for Governor Bill Richardson while I was there in cultural affairs. So I'm just delighted to have Ron on today because of his extraordinary experience. And he has had, you know, 30 plus years of teaching at New Mexico Highlands University. He's been engaged in athletics and sports and encouraging sports teams to perform at their highest levels. He has a way of bringing out the best in his students and all those that he works with. He called me a saint, which is I'm not even Catholic, so that doesn't work for me. But it is a great gift to have him as a friend. And Ron, let us talk about your work, why and how you became so interested in of acclaiming people, of supporting people, of accomplishment. Yourself is you are a highly accomplished person, and you have encouraged the same qualities in all that you encounter. Where did that come from, Ron?
Well, I did grow up in, I was born in San Diego, California, but my parents moved shortly after I was born, and we moved to Southern Colorado. Southern Colorado and Northern New Mexico are very similar. We didn't cross the border crossed us. So I have always been, as an educator, involved with Hispanic students, males and females, to strive almost the same heights as I had. And most of them have passed me up.
Well, it is an accomplishment to be able to inspire others, and you certainly have done that. And in our years of friendship, you have inspired me to work even harder. And I wonder the involvement that you've had in your writing, and you've covered a lot of history. As you say, you come from northern New Mexico, Colorado, which are very similar. What generated your activism? Because you have been active in trying to make change and support our democratic ideals for the decades of your life. What inspired that kind of activism that has been part of your life?
John and Yvonne Rodriguez movie camera filmmakers put in waiting room. John and Yvonne Rodriguez movie camera film.
To answer that, when I first started elementary school, the teacher would say,
John and
George Washington was the father of my country. And I would say, George Washington,
John.
my my parents don't look like George Washington. My grandparents don't look like George Washington. He is not the father of my country. So that kind of stimulated me to work with Hispanic populations and encourage people to follow the same footsteps that I have. I've had an illustrious career, an illustrious wife. My wife has been so supportive, and she comes from a very traditional Hispanic environment. By the way, Adonda, let me tell you how I started with dichos. My mother raised three boys on dichos, and I had made a copy on just handwritten, and they sat in my file cabinet for many years. So I finally decided I got to put these details so that my grandchildren, great grandchildren, will know the gems of wisdom that are attached to details.
Well, dichos for those of you that don't speak Spanish, are proverbs. They're Spanish proverbs, and they're messages, almost like biblical messages, very succinct. They're amusing. There's one that uh, el consejo de la mujer es muy importante y el que no lo aprenda es loco. It's saying something like, the wisdom of a woman is very wise, and he who does not pay attention, is crazy. So things like that are part of our culture, and they're humorous things. They're very serious. They're very deep things. And what Ron is referring to is my book of Latino virtues, which was published in 2000 by Simon and Schuster, is It's All in the Frijoles. And I really urge those of you, Hispanic or not, to take a look at this book. It's very wise, and I didn't realize, but at that time I was writing about things that are very pertinent today, and putting it in a language that is very timely for today. I was using phraseology even that, we get what we pay attention to, because I was passing on my mother's wisdom. So Ron had this very deeply entrenched early life with the wisdom of the culture, and the Hispanic culture, the Mexican culture, the Latino culture is very wise, and we don't hear much about it in this country. We don't hear much about it in this day and age, because we're getting too much negative vitriol, anti-immigrant, anti-Hispano, anti-Latino literature. And it's very important that we learn to recognize and learn about the culture, because from its inside out, as Ron has done. Ron, you've been at the cutting edge also of uh, writing genealogy. Why has genealogy been so important to you?
Well, because our ancestors, where they came from, Zacatecas, Mexico, and northern Spain and Asturias, I've been able to travel in each of those areas, and there's a community in Asturias that's called Mesta, and oftentimes they will refer to those people, allá viven los Mestas. So Mesta came into Mestas or Maestas. So I've tracked it down from the earliest beginnings.
Well, you've tracked down a lot, and the genealogy, I think, is very important, because it traces the Spanish roots in this nation back to the 1500s. I mean, the Spanish came to the Americas in 1519, and of course they traveled up through uh, South America, through Central America into Mexico.
From John and Yvonne.
And from there, the Spanish ruled. I think many Americans don't know this. The Spanish ruled the Americas for 300 years. They were here 100 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. And so the heritage in this country is really Spanish first. And then Mexico sought its independence from Spain in 1821. And so really the brevity of Mexican rule in the Southwest was a fraction of what the Spanish rule had been. So we've gained many of our our teachings do come from Spain, and then they alter and change as the cultures joined the indigenous with the Spanish. But the Spanish were already indigenous, because they were ruled by the Muslims 6 centuries, okay? 7 centuries. And so you have a lot of Arabic influence, Muslim influence in Spain. The foods, the words like Alhambra, Allah, comes from those kind of words. Well, how do you see that impact working in throughout our culture, Ron, and into the present time?
Well, if we don't teach the culture, we're going to lose it. And that would be a big mistake. A lot of people pay a lot of money to study for commercial purposes another language. And we've had that language with us for at least 1,500 years.
Mhm.
I was able to do a presentation in Lisbon at the Alhambra when Queen Isabella financed Cristobal Colon to come to the Western world. I was probably myself and another relative. By the way, I'm related also to the Colons, and it's not uncommon to be interrelated. Um, I contend that when the Pilgrims came to Plymouth Rock, they didn't discover America, they discovered Indians. And our Indo Hispanic tradition has been, um, in many cases, in the public schools, English only. And I had big problems with that ever since I was a small young man. So I've devoted an entire life to make sure that my granddaughters, even though they have an Anglo surname, that they speak Spanish. And I have a granddaughter that's taught herself French, and she's doing very well.
It's very strange because I have studied Spanish in Latin America. I've gone to Mexico several times to take classes at the Instituto Allende and also in Costa Rica. And it's interesting because I became tongue-tied when I entered kindergarten in Los Angeles. I went to Logan Street School in the Echo Park area. And we were punished for speaking Spanish. And that led me to become tongue-tied in Spanish. And fortunately, my father and my mother both spoke the language, but I dropped it before I got to school because I felt that prejudice and I didn't want to be identified with it. And I didn't want to feel that, being a second class
From
citizen.
Dawn and I.
And so it's very important that we have two and three languages. There were people from Europe, Germany, Austria, all these countries abroad that were coming to Central America and Mexico, Costa Rica and Mexico to study Spanish because they wanted to engage in a global economy. So why in this country are we shutting all this down? And why are we not, why are we now, speaking with such vitriol and hatred against the economic workforce, the powerhouse for this nation's economy? California is the fourth largest economy in the world. And we are a majority minority state. And the majority of the minorities, so called, are Latinos and Spanish speakers. And these are the people that are moving up. They're coming in and
From John and I.
they're farm workers, they're factory workers, they're teachers, lawyers, doctors, CEOs now. But people come in and with the simplest of goals is to lead a better life for their children. And those kids of immigrants are going to major universities. I talked to one driver that I just met in Orange County recently, and I asked him how many children he has. He's from Guatemala and he has three children. I said, "What do your children do?" He says, "Well, my oldest daughter is graduating from UC Berkeley with honors in, I think, biology or something, medicine. And the second one is at Stanford. That means she had to have gotten a scholarship to go to Stanford." And the boy is still 15, so we don't know what he's going to do. But this is what happens with immigrants. And they produce children who become future leaders. And so it's foolish for us to have this leadership that is speaking so much against immigrant people and even picking people up like myself and citizens without discriminating whether somebody is here legally or not and sending them to Timbuktu, Sing Sing, El Salvador, wherever they're going. But we have to switch this up, and people, voters need to understand the contributions that our people are making. We're not the rapists and criminals. Actually, the truth of that matter is we've got somebody at the helm that is himself. So, it's projection and it's a false information that is getting out into the airwaves, and it's getting worse and worse under today. Ron, you were involved in a measure to eliminate discrimination in education. And I think it's termed the Maestas something, but I'm not sure of it. It was before the Brown versus education, et cetera, and some of these other more
Education.
well-known measures. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the a father that was raised
From
and
John and
George
Ivan.
Washington moved to Colorado in the early 1900s. He took his young son by the name of Miguel Antonio to get registered for school. The superintendent told him he had to attend the Mexican school.
Mm.
They had an American school and a Mexican school. Well, the father, as well as a couple of organizations, won the SPM DTU, which is the largest um, organization, fraternal organization in America, supported the case to be brought to the Colorado uh, legislature. It it honored uh, Francisco Maestas, who was a relative of mine, as well as his son, Miguel Antonio. And now in Alamosa, Colorado, southern Colorado, you're familiar with, we have a maquette in a judicial complex in honor of that family. And it's the first recorded case, including the Brown, the Mendes case in California, and so forth. This one was preceded all those. It laid dormant. We did,
This is all very important work, and you have been at the forefront and in teaching your students for so many years at New Mexico Highlands University, which is an excellent school.
Ruth Broid.
It's it's very timely now because we're going through such a period of deconstruction uh, and uh, and supporting of education. Let's talk a little bit, Ron, about this idea of uh, banning books, eliminating history, changing history, removing statues. What is the danger in all of that?
genocide. You know, it's in Santa Fe, especially what's occurred, counterculture, taking down uh, statues, um, disrespecting the military, who actually uh, turned the Confederacy soldiers away at the Battle of Glorieta. The A lot of people in Santa Fe have moved in, brought their money, the Greer Garsons of the world, the Judah Roberts of the world,
John and
and the Gene Hackmans of the world.
John.
They think they own Santa Fe now. It's really upsetting. Now I had a good friend when I was.
John.
His name was Ricardo Salazar,
John.
and he changed his name to Richard um, Smith. You, I called him a bastard for doing that because that told me that he was ashamed at the culture that he was rejecting. It made me much stronger in my assessment to work with Hispanic students in Taos, in Las Vegas, and it was important to the parents. If you see the parents on graduation day attending those commencement exercises, first generation or some of their children, they are so proud and so thankful, and they can't even stop by expressing their admiration for not only me, but some of the other faculty members at Metro Highlands University.
I think it's interesting to note that your own career, you got engaged with technologies a long time ago. You studied what is it called, some kind of field of technology way back when. I mean, I would be happy with Ma Bell and Windows 98. I'm slow on technology, but you picked it up immediately, and this is a couple of many decades ago. What inspired you to go after technology to pursue it as an important part of your educational pursuits?
Well, the technology, especially in the business relies on technology. I I did two postdoctoral years at the University of Minnesota and Indiana University. At that time, the emphasis was to develop computer education programs in business. I was successful in writing a grant, $125,000, to the National Science Foundation. On the day I was going to submit that application, my president, who was Gilbert, name is Gilbert Sanchez, says you'll never get any money from him. You're not a scientist. You have no business applying for him. I said, look, it took me 20 minutes. 3 weeks later, I said, it took me 20 minutes. I'll need 10 copies of the proposal. 3 weeks later, he calls me up, real stern. Get over to my office. Get over here right away. I said, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? I sat on his office. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. What are you talking about? He says, I just got a call from the National Science Foundation that they're giving you $120,000 in a non-scientist environment. And I got that grant. I computerized the entire business curriculum. I built laboratories. I put computers in every faculty member's office, and that was a takeoff.
So what you're saying is what I think is important information for our young people and our teachers and staff and all of us, who are living through these very challenging times. And that is when you have an idea, follow it up. Not everybody's going to agree with your idea. And one of the joyful things I experienced going through the civil rights movement, the Chicana movement, the women's movement, all the social movements in the late 60s and 70s is we got things done because we didn't know we couldn't do it. I
Well,
remember
you're
being
familiar.
in a meeting with the California Commission on the Status of Women, and our mentors told us to do the research and that we were going to be testifying at this commission. We didn't know anything. We were 20 and 24, Gloria Molina and I. And, and so we go to this meeting, and I see a commission of all white-haired, so-called white women. I don't think white is a race anyway, but that's the description of terms we've been using. And I said to the head of the Civil Rights Commission, Phil Montes, I said, Phil, shouldn't we have women on this commission that look like us? And he said, well, there's somebody coming over here right now that can help. And it was Assemblyman Richard La Torre, who died recently, but he was a real kick butt politician. He was very raw, very direct. He got things done. If somebody from UC Berkeley came before the finance committee to ask for more money for the university, he would say something like, when you have 25% of your student enrollment Latino, come and see me. So he played hardball and he got a lot of things done. He did reapportionment in the state of California, which is why we have so many Latinos in office in California, because he spread it all out. He wasn't trying to, put everybody in one district or not, and not trying to manipulate things like they're trying to do in Texas and elsewhere right now. So it's interesting that we didn't know what we couldn't do, and we got things done. Richard then said to me, he looked at me and he says, to Gloria and I, he says, come to my office tomorrow morning. This was Friday, it was Saturday morning. Come to my office in Highland Park tomorrow morning. He said, let me give you a lesson in politics. We got our first lesson in politics. He says, Governor Reagan is governor. I know his appointment secretary, Dan Whitehead. Send me some Republican resumes. So we had to go, digging through our membership list. We found one, Carolyn Orona, and she got appointed to the California Commission on the Status of Women as the first Mexican American appointee. So, practical politics, we got things done. And he bridged the two parties. He ended up working for Dick Reardon, who was a Republican, for mayor in LA. So he was a very, very astute politician, very direct, very raw in his way of speaking. He didn't pretty anything up, but he got things done. And I think he's to be acknowledged for that. But this is all important to us because each one of us, like Professor Maestas, when he had an idea, he pursued it. And all of his ideas have grown into really positive, wonderful programs, events, books. He's been very prolific in his writing. I think even since he's so-called retired, how many books and genealogies have you done since then, Ron?
Probably about 180.
Yeah, so this is a prolific man,
And
even in his so-called retirement years. He's put nose to the grindstone each day and produced and worked towards greater opportunities for everyone, really, because what's good for one group for Latinos is good for everybody. I think in the schools that have 25% Latino enrollment, universities and colleges and universities that have 25% enrollment get federal funds. And it's not that much per student. It's about $100 per student. But the overall effect is that all students in those universities that have 25% Latino enrollment are benefiting from additional federal programs. So it's not just one group or another that needs to be supported. We need to support our immigrant groups. We need workers in this country. We're now really in a dire situation all over the country, and especially in the major cities in California and elsewhere that are being attacked by ICE. And it's horrific and unthinkable that we have military on our streets, that can turn guns that are meant to kill people against our own people here in our country. It's we're in deep doo-doo, as they say. And so everything that this man has done in his life has been to make the world a better place, to make not only New Mexico, but the entire country a better place, more open-minded, more democratic, more with greater opportunities for everybody without discriminating against, color, race, language, or anything else. And
Rhonda, I want to
you're to
back
be honored.
up. I want to back up a little bit. A phrase that I go by, my goal is si se puede.
Yes,
You're familiar with si se puede.
yes. Si se
Dolores
puede.
Huerta
Yes, we can. It's a phrase that was coined by Cesar Chavez, the president of the United
Cesar
Farmers
Chavez
Union.
and Dolores Huerta. That has always been my goal. I was able in the mid 70s to get a Ford Foundation, and I spent the better part of the year working with the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. They inspired me to no end.
Well, he was inspiring. He laid his life on the line frequently. He died prematurely because he was fasting so much to oppose the Great
Yes,
Strike. I knew him. I interviewed him. I was privileged to interview him, be the first journalist to go to the compound in California and interview him for an 8-minute package for KNBC television, which I was working for at the time. But he was a great man, and he accomplished a great deal non-violently. That's the beauty of it. He was non-violent. He fasted. He protested by sitting. Um, I saw him there were other icons of the era, Congressman Ed Roybal, Bert Corona, and let's see, was Cesar Burt, and I'm forgetting the last one, but the Herman Gallegos, and who developed Hispanics and philanthropy. But these were icons of the civil rights movement, and Cesar was one of them, and he was a very gentle, quiet man with a very quick wit, not unlike you, Professor Maestas, and he was a great leader. And I think his words, I think, are a good place for us to end our conversation today. There's much more we could talk about,
Sharon Trujillo,
but
put in waiting room.
I want to leave.
Sharon Trujillo has entered the waiting.
I think it's important to to honor those people who have been the champions and have been
Sharon Trujillo.
the forerunners of positive social change in this
Sharon
country,
Trujillo.
and which you, Professor Maestas, have you certainly been part of for over the decades of your life. And I wish you much more life and success, and keep writing, because you keep adding to our the sum of knowledge in the world. And we need to know more about your background and about how and what accomplishments you've achieved. with your ganas, as they say, just the pure guts and sheer desire to do it. We all need to do this, all of us, of whatever backgrounds we are, to keep pushing, to keep striving, to keep standing for the good and standing against all that needs to be prevented. So I want to thank you for joining me, Professor Maestas, today. Do you have any last thing you want to say?
Can I say one last comment? A few years ago, my wife's father passed away, and I told my wife, I said, "Do you mind if I apply for the presidency of Adams State College? That way you can be close to your mother." I made the final list. I got interviewed. The first question that I was asked, "What more do you Mexicans want?" I said, "What?" I asked the guy to repeat it so that I wouldn't answer incorrectly, and he said it again. "What more do you Mexicans want?" And I said, "We want the same things that you around that table have enjoyed. You grew up in Alamosa. We, myself and my brother, had to export our talents somewhere else. This what happens is not too long ago. And discrimination is still very much alive in the employment scene. They do not want Hispanics to do the same or to accomplish the same and promote the culture.
Well, we will accomplish, we will succeed. Everyone in this country is to have the same equal opportunities before the law, and we will reverse what we are experiencing now. We will move forward to maintain our democratic ideals, and we will fulfill the ideal, the vision, the intention, and yes, the spiritually affirmative prayer that's in our preamble to the Constitution. We do these things XYZ in order to move towards a more perfect union. That's a powerful phrase. So thank you for coming on board today and speaking and sharing your story. We can learn much more from your ganas and your constant effort and pursuit of justice and freedom and equality in this country. Thank you, Professor Maestas, for joining us. And for all of you joining me today, thank you so much for tuning in to Do You See What I See? We'll be back again next month. I'm Yolanda Nava. Thank you for joining us.
Yolanda, can I say one last thing?
Go ahead.
I've been a jeweler uh, for the last 50 years. I collect Hispanic colonial art, retablos, bultos, santos. I've donated that entire collection, 60 years collection, to the Maestas Committee to form a Maestas Scholarship Fund. And we're going to be having probably an online auction. There's some really nice items made in gold and silver that I also have spent a lot of time with. But I want to promote that whole Maestas case. It's on the web, and you can familiarize yourself with what happened in Southern Colorado 100 and some years ago. Thank you, Yolanda.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Maestas, for joining us today. And for our guests, do tune in next month rather, for the next edition of Do You See What I See? It's been great to be with you. I'm Yolanda Nava. Have a great day.